Hey friends, the views of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Let's Talk Menopause. Let's Talk Menopause does not provide medical advice. The content in this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions that you may have. Welcome to Hello Menopause. I'm your host, Stacey London. Hello Menopause is changing the conversation around menopause. In every episode, we explore the physical, emotional, and mental changes that women experience during this transformative stage in life. This season, we're so thankful to our sponsor, Versally. The options for menopause care can be overwhelming, which is why they've done the research to help you navigate all of them. Versally is a one-stop shop for expert advice, curated products, and access to virtual care. It's where menopause makes sense. Visit Versally.com to learn more. Gaby Natale is a 3-time Daytime Emmy Award winner, a best-selling author, and one of the only Latina women to own the rights to her own TV show. She's built her career on turning obstacles into opportunities, and today she's here to talk about reinvention, reclaiming your voice, and why midlife might be your power era. We also dig into what it means to embrace change and how menopause can be a portal to purpose. Please welcome Gaby Natale to Hello Menopause. Gaby, I am so excited to talk to you. And you've spoken a lot about stepping outside your comfort zone and the ideas of reinvention. And you know, I really do feel like, I don't even know if it's reinvention. I feel like this is such uncharted territory when we talk about midlife. It's almost like invention, right? For the first time. How do you navigate that? And how did you start that conversation?
Well, for me, I've always thought about my own journey. I talk about the pioneer spirit, and that's been a commonality in my journey from starting fresh. I'm originally from Argentina, in a new country where I had no friends, family, connections, and anything, and carving your own way. Then in the media industry, trying to find my own place where I could be multidimensional, because the media, as you know, you can be in the formal news anchor who is sacrificing spontaneity for credibility, and then you can be like the sexy one who is only allowed to navigate shallow waters. And I'm a multidimensional woman, and that was something that was very important for me to navigate. And in all honesty, Stacy, I believe when I recalibrated my own belief system and I became an entrepreneur and I started doing my own media project, is where everything happened. And I went from starting my media projects and my first TV show out of a carpet warehouse in West Texas.
Wow.
To winning 3 Daytime Emmys back to back.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So the idea is that we need to pioneer whatever we're doing in our lives, whatever stage we are in our lives. And what do I mean by embracing a pioneer spirit? What I believe is that we have to believe in our vision, Stacey, even before we have the result to validate it, before having the results. And I talked in my life to so many pioneers, superachievers, people who beat the odds. And that's what I see as a commonality, because every time when we make that decision and we embrace the pioneer spirit, when we choose to pioneer, we move the world forward. And I think for us in midlife, it's so important because right now, I think there's a cognitive dissonance that we are living as women in midlife between how we are portrayed and our realities and how we feel. Because let's make a small exercise for everyone who's listening right now. Grab your phone, make an image search, type the word menopause, see what images come up.
I'm terrified to do this. Should I do this in real time?
Here's the thing. More than likely, you are going to see images of women who are portrayed in a passive and a disempowered way, who are defined only by their symptoms. So they are fanning themselves or they are holding.
Exactly. I'm with you.
Yes. And at the same time, and this is very curious, we know that menopause in the US, the average age is 51. For women of color, it's 48. But the women that you're going to see there more than likely look older than 51 to 48. And here's the thing. That's when I talk about like a cognitive dissonance phenomenon is the reality is they are younger, they are more vital, they are not defined only by their symptoms. They're a whole person, a whole woman. And menopause coincides with a moment when they have the highest earning potential, their highest earning. It coincides with a moment where at their job and their careers, they are at the highest they're going to be, more than likely, or they are building to be even higher. And the way we are showing them is very disempowering. I remember I talked to a friend like 2 months ago. She's a good friend. And I said, like, you know what? I'm working in this space. And she said, oh no, it's so depressing. Don't tell me about it. Why does she say that? Because of all the images that we're seeing.
You know, is it this time where you could be at your highest earning potential? But this is also the time where, you know, if Scientific American did that U-shaped graph about happiness is at its lowest point between 45 and 55 for women. And my argument is that's because we're at our highest risk for decreased earning potential, highest risk for divorce and depression. Now, nobody wants to hear those stats. Nobody wants to hear that women in menopause, 4 out of 10 think about leaving their high-powered jobs. 1 out of 10 do, because they're not getting the kind of medical attention or treatment that they need. And what I find frustrating is like, yes, that's the bad news. But just as you said before, this idea of imagining, like coming up with your vision for what you want before you see the results is how we turn this around, is how people like you with a story like yours, which I want to talk about more in a minute, really get people to see another side of this.
Here's the thing, Stacy. We are not our moms or our grandmother's generation going through menopause. We are the healthiest, wealthiest, more vibrant, and the very first one in history that has the luxury of having access to internet and social media while we're going through this transition. And I think that is changing so much everything.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that's why I keep, I go on and on about the fact that it's Gen X's legacy to make midlife a different experience. And that is because not just that we're Gen X, it's that we're middle-aged at this moment in history when we're seeing all kinds of crazy things in politics. We're seeing all kinds of divisiveness in culture. This is the one thing that we are able to dig our heels into and really change the game. And I think that you say that from, every point of view. You said that for you, this sense of power really came from recalibrating, right? When you got to midlife. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between a recalibration and being a pioneer woman, because a recalibration seems like it's a part of that process, but I'd love to know more about that.
I think the recalibration is being self-aware of what our inner dialogue is. What are we telling ourselves? Are we still telling ourselves that our best days are behind us? Are we telling ourselves that we don't have the time? Because if you think about it, and this, that's why facts are so important. If you think about it, the average age of men in the highest office in the past 100 years, so the age when they were sworn in presidents, average one in the past 100 years is 54. And what are we telling women? Not for the highest office, hopefully one day, but not for not for the highest office, for regular jobs that, you're discontinued, your best days are behind you, you're not welcome here. So I think even when sometimes the world is putting that message out, we have to be the ones who rethink and recalibrate and challenge that message. Yes.
Yeah. Because I was saying, I do think that there is a very kind of natural, almost perspective shift when you get to a certain point. That kind of recalibration that you're talking about is both deliberate and kind of physiological, right? There is something about the fact that I have never cared less what other people think of me. And there's something about the fact that I feel more empowered to do things that scare me than I ever did.
The tolerance for BS is going down, 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 down.
But the crazy thing is that I feel like that recalibration also came when I was able to acknowledge the things that I was going to have to grieve, like the young version of myself, or my body when I was young, or the fact that I can't, biologically have children anymore. And some people never had that option, but just the idea that things do end.
But I think because also, Stacy, no, go ahead. Because also we were never trained to appreciate each stage of life.
I agree with you. Talk more about that. Why do you think that's so?
Because here's the thing, and this is what I think it's changing, and it's so phenomenal. Forever, ever, you could be either aspirational or a woman in menopause. Both of them at the same time? Impossible. Look at the fashion industry, look at the cosmetics industry, look at everywhere around. So you could be aspirational, and aspirational will mean that you have a certain size, a certain age, a certain, etc. Or you can be a woman in menopause, and that will by default make you not aspirational at all. So I think what we are challenging right now is that notion that we can be happier, we can be fulfilled, we can have a deep sense of appreciation of this journey at this stage, because we're also living longer, healthier lives. So if I tell myself, okay, once a woman hits 50, she's done or she's finished, then what am I telling myself? I may have more than likely, statistically, multiple decades, productive, happy decades ahead of me, and I'm giving up on so many things. I may be giving up prematurely on dreams that were within my reach just because of thinking that these opportunities or this time frame is not available for me.
Isn't right, exactly. And I want to talk a little bit about your book, The Virtuous Circle. And you talk about the importance of breaking barriers. So what barriers do you think women face when it comes to taking control of their lives, of their health in midlife, and especially in traditionally underserved communities where, let's be honest, there are not the same opportunities. It's not like everybody is going to, immediately or magically get menopause hormone therapy, or immediately or magically get to see a menopause specialist even, or even a doctor. So what do we do for underserved communities? How do we make that, how do we break barriers for everybody, not just for you?
Well, that was for me the beginning of this journey, because what happened to me is I was medically induced to menopause. And then here's the thing. What I realized is that for most people who go through it naturally, they have like this time to, as you say, mourn and process. In my own case, I'm a breast cancer survivor. So it was a medically induced menopause. So menopause was good news because it meant that if I get to leave menopause, I get to leave. Period.
That's a very different perspective, and one that we haven't really talked about on the podcast is medically induced menopause can come at an age younger than midlife, right? It can come at any time. So a lot of the sort of piecing you need to do can be very separate, right? There's the physical manifestation of cancer and being able to deal with that. And then the side effect can be something as difficult or tricky or not explained as menopause.
Exactly. Well, in my case, it was medically induced at 46. So it was not
too far off.
Not too far, really, from your average natural transition. And I always make fun when I think about it. Like, nothing is going to make you more motivated to look for information on menopause than having all the symptoms at the same time. Because when you have a medically induced menopause, it's like you're having everything at the same time on steroids. It's not this more subtle, more gradual transition. So you have everything, the hot flashes, the insomnia, painful sex, everything at the same time. And then what happened to me is that I realized there was this revolution in a way. I like this word, this revolution that is happening on how we talk about menopause, because up to that day, in all honesty, I never really thought about asking my mom how old she was when she was in, And so I said oh, I'm going through medically induced menopause. I'm 46, but how old were you? Because that could give me some idea of the runway she said 55. Oh, okay. Well, so, still, average ages, average things. And then when I started looking for information, I found that sometimes it was fragmented. Sometimes I find scientific information. Sometimes I find not trustworthy information, everything mixed up. And I thought if I am a journalist, I'm professional, I'm bilingual, and I'm having a hard time figuring this out, I'm sure there's many more women out there who are going through all this and are feeling, first thing is isolated because there's still a lot of shame tied to it. And I've always been, Stacy, the one who says the age out loud and things out loud. So
I completely agree with you. I feel like we're chained to numbers, your weight, your size, your age. It's ridiculous. What difference does it make?
Exactly. And so there was the shame, then there was the confusion, and then you don't feel great. And that's when I said, in particular, you were talking about different communities. And in particular, for minority communities, I couldn't see a lot that was culturally thought for them. So that's why I went online and I realized that menopausia, which is the actual word in Spanish for menopause, menopausia.com was available. It was not cheap, but was available.
That makes all the difference in the world, but yes.
And I said, you know what? We are going to own menopausia. So we said, this is going to be a place, a destination, not a challenge, not a work, not a 360 destination for every day of the year. So it's a destination where in English and in Spanish, because everyone is welcome, in English and in Spanish, you can find first information that you can trust in a sea of information where sometimes we feel a little bit lost or overwhelmed. The second one is community, forums and community where if you want anonymously, you can participate anonymously. It's still such a taboo, as much as we want to mention and it's happening that the cultural change is taking place, still for so many women, it's really shameful.
Of course. That's going to take even longer. We've been absolutely chipping away right now for a decade. It's going to take more time. Again, to me, what you said before is so interesting. Not only, we're just not taught about our lives at any stage in a real manner, whether, what that looks like. Menstruation and pregnancy, we know a little bit more about, but we're not taught that kind of each stage needs its own rule book. And I think that the idea that people who are potentially in no position to get information from doctors can use your site effectively. Now, do you make recommendations about doctors or do you make recommendations about who they can see?
There's a section where you have resources and you can have directories with different resources and everything. And we also have a meno shop where people are going to be able to find from books, because you need that education, to your intimate gel and everything in between. So the idea is that since it's fragmented, since sometimes it's not as easy to navigate, you can have that at the tip of your fingers. And that's been the model behind it, that it's a new way of thinking about your menopause. Even, right now, as we're working with the designers and we're working with the copywriters and everyone, the pictures, they said like, what pictures? Because we did this, the experiment that I did.
We need more pictures.
Yes. So the experiment that we did, like we saw the pictures that were usually used, and we said, we're not going that route. This is going to be more like, look at the pictures that I have in my, I love pop culture. I love art. I love a modern take. And I think we can be eclectic. We can have amazing scientific information and the feeling that you are going through an upscale women's magazine at the same time.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic to me, because I still think to some degree that we are kind of, traditional in the way that we talk about sort of men and women, and that this is a female issue when, look, there's been so much talk about gender. To talk about this as like a female issue, I always say with female physiology, we need to be modern about the conversation, right? We want to keep up with and be inclusive of all of the categories of people who can experience this for any number of reasons, right? Whether it's medically induced, surgically induced, chronological, whether you're trans or any of these things, I think are really, really important. So when you started to recalibrate and you started to see how you could pioneer in this space, what are some of the practices that helped you do this? Is there anything, first of all, surviving breast cancer is no small feat. So where did you have to get yourself mentally? I think, one, to fight that. And then two, what are the practices that sort of have grounded you and kind of propelled you towards this new project?
I think one of the things that have helped me is realizing that this is so much bigger than myself, Stacy. When I went through breast cancer, the treatments were working, and I saw that there was light at the end of the tunnel and everything. And by the way, people are not seeing this. They don't have image, but I'm rocking my post-chemo chic short hair.
It looks so good.
Just having fun with it. But what happened was that one day I said, like, how I can be of service. So first it was with the diagnosis and the breast cancer awareness. And I'm very proactive. So I said, I'm going to send an email to Paula Schneider, the president of Susan G. Komen, cold email. And I'm going to tell her, like, this is who I am. This is my professional path. This is what happened to me. And this is how I feel I can help you and your organization. And it was so beautiful because within an hour, I was connected internally with everyone, the PR team, the marketing team, everyone, to see how we could make an impact, a bilingual impact. And so I did plenty, and I still do plenty of interviews to kind of destigmatize and bring visibility. And I realized that the need was not just for breast cancer, it was for women's issues. And that's why, as I started navigating menopause, I said, like, this is a piece of the puzzle. And this is something that, and here's the funny part, when you compare it, we talk a lot about breast cancer, about mammograms, about things that are diseases. And then when it comes to menopause, which we all, like, breast cancer is 1 in 8. 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer. 8 in 8, 10 of 10, 100 of 100 are going to go through menopause. But we talk less about it, which is insane. And that's something that I think has helped me along this journey, which is like, sometimes you have projects and you come from media, so you're going to understand this. Sometimes there are projects where it's like yourself, your career, your own path, etc. So it's more like talent-centric. This is not one of these projects. This is a project and an idea that it's about all women and how we can help each other and how we can be more visible. In fact, for the launch, we're going to have, and I'm going to send you the invite once it's ready, but we are going to have a campaign of 101 real voices of menopause, because we need the real faces. We talk a lot, and it's great to have doctors and it's great to have so many specialists, but the shame is still there. So I want to have a digital mosaic of 101 women from around the world. And we're going to have the doctors there and everything. But I also want to have women who say like, enough.
Enough. Exactly. But I mean, you already seem like you were always entrepreneurial. I mean, you have no fear. Is that something that you've always had, or is that something that really is the result of having an experience with cancer, a result of having seen the iniquity in women's health? Is it a result of being like, if I don't push, nobody else is going to do it. It might as well be me.
I think it's a combination, Stacy. There were many moments in my life, like, for example, in Argentina, the moment when I graduated with a master's degree was the year 2001, which was the biggest crisis, economical, political, 20% unemployment, 5 presidents in 10 days. So you really have to become resourceful and, believe in your talent, believe in yourself, be laser focused, because otherwise, you're not going to be able to fulfill your dreams. And then when you come to a new country where you don't have friends or family, if you have a lot of fears, you're not going to make it. You don't have a lot of wiggle room to second guess yourself. You have to find a way to make it happen. And then in the year 2007, I became an entrepreneur in media because of what I told you, the recalibration, don't put me in a box. I don't want to be either the sexy reporter or the formal news anchor. I want to get to decide for myself who I want to be in this industry. So that's why I'm producing myself. And that's what made a whole lot of difference. And I think with each step that you take and you believe in your vision before having the results, what we talked in the beginning, pioneering, believing in that vision. And I always have a moment where I say, am I a little bit of a visionary or completely insane? I don't know.
I think you could be both. I'm not going to allow duality there, right? You have multiplicity in you. So you could be that crazy and a visionary. Most visionaries are.
We are all, whenever we're doing things in an uncharted territory, like menopause space, the way we're doing it, there's this moment where we have reassurance. For example, Microsoft became our first client even before launching. But at the same time, we do have, like, in my community, who's talking, not doctors, public figures in my community, who's talking about menopause, like, hey, I'm going to be the poster child of menopause. It's not happening yet. And I'm happy to be your poster child for menopause, but I understand the fear because we grew up in a society, in industries in general, for just general jobs, but in the particular, in the media industry, it's even worse. It's even worse. There's so many people who feel like they cannot age or cannot say their age out loud.
Yes, exactly. And I think that the other thing that you're talking about isn't that we're just not allowed to age. There's an iniquity that is inherent sort of in patriarchal societal structure as we know it, right? We have such deep iniquity in terms of health. But no matter what you're talking about for women's health, whether it's menopause or breast cancer or, even knowing that breast cancer isn't the number one killer of women, it's cardiovascular health, right? A lot of people don't know that. And what I have found with people who are not originally, who don't have English as their first language, right? English is the second language, have been put through. I met a woman at a conference who told me that her uterus and ovaries were taken out without her permission because they thought it was easier than having to deal with whatever was going on. And you hear things like that and you're like, there's nobody there to fight for you. You have no advocate. You have nobody saying, hey, wait, there's a different way to do this. And it may cause, the medical establishment more problems, but who cares? How do we make medicine more patient-centric, particularly when it comes to women?
I think there are 2 things that are key for this. First, and this may be a challenge for some women, and particularly women in minority groups or women of color, which is we really have to advocate for ourselves. We really have to be the one who says, this answer is not a great answer for me. Give me more. tell me more, and look for the next doctor and the next doctor if you can. And then the second one is on the health system, because doctors and medical professionals they don't get a lot of training. They get, I think it's 4 hours in their whole medical career of menopause training. So if we as patients don't know our own body, don't have the information, feel bad or guilty advocating for ourselves, and then we come across doctors who are not updated on the latest developments, who are still repeating the Women's Health Initiative results from 20 years ago. So that is the perfect storm. So I think we can only control the controllables. Changing systems take a lot of time, but the controllables is looking for the information. There's information. It may be messy sometimes to sort it out, the good one, the bad one.
I think that's actually really important to say, right? Because we are at that phase where menopause has become almost like a pop culture topic. Not everybody is talking about it, but those who are, there's conflicting information, and it is hard to sometimes sort through that.
Yeah. And for me, for example, as a breast cancer survivor who is estrogen positive, my tumor was estrogen positive, I am exactly in the center of the conversation between hormonal and non-hormonal treatments. So if you read recent medical reports, now you know that vaginal estrogen is safe for somebody like me.
Of course, yes, because it's not systemic.
But there are other ones who have to be on a case-by-case assessment from your oncologist, and we are receiving new information day after day. So for me, being at this intersection of being a breast cancer survivor and being a menopause advocate means that I have to absorb as much information as I can, because the things are getting, the guidelines are getting updated constantly.
Yeah. And I think what's also so interesting is that you are speaking to 1 out of 8 women who is going to get breast cancer is also going to have to navigate menopause. And if you can create a connection between, what medically induced menopause is and how to manage that, then you're really talking to people of all ages. Because I do think that a lot of people feel excluded from the conversation when we just talk about 47 to 51, right? As being the time, because we get menopause for all sorts of different reasons. So I think that that's very important. But what is the advice? What is the advice that you would give to someone if you could go back to your younger self when you were first diagnosed? What would be the things that you would say were the strongest practices to help you get through and also become so curious that menopause, the effects of having cancer treatment that gave you menopausal symptoms was enough for you to go out and figure this out? What gives you that urge, that flame, that fire? Because some people give up.
Mm-hmm. There's something my doctor told me, my oncologist, when we were more at the end of the treatment, the chemo treatment, and I was showing up. We should have been friends at that time. You should have seen the turbans, the sequence turbans, you name it, for chemotherapy, everything. I was showing up with full fashion force because you know what? That's also a part of feeling well. It's not frivolity. It's not something superficial. When you're going through something, and I even did a photo shoot, when I had as little hair as this, to document it, kind of experiment, because you can be beautiful and in treatment at the same time.
Of course. And I think that to show that is so important, particularly because I do feel, and I don't have personal experience with cancer, but I imagine very much like menopause, you kind of lose a sense of identity and you lose confidence. It chips away at your self-esteem when you are fighting for your life.
Yes, because you don't feel great. Your body's changing. So there's something that my doctor told me right up to around the end of my treatment. And that was, Gaby, you were your best friend during this treatment. And I think that is what, when you ask me, what should I tell other women when they're going through, they don't need to be going through cancer. Maybe they're going through, perimenopause, menopause, or any challenge in life, is you have to become your own best friend, especially during those times, because that woman that I embodied in that challenging time is the version of myself that I'm the proudest of. It's the one, she maybe didn't have any hair, looked a little bit like crop. She didn't have a lot of energy, but you have to make the effort to keep seeing the world from a place of possibilities. And that goes for people who are going through health challenges, life transitions, whether it's menopause or something else, people who are going through a bad financial time, or people who are just feeling confused. Because too many times we jump to permanent conclusions about ourselves or our dreams based on temporary circumstances.
Yes. Amen to that. Amen to that. Louder for the people in the back.
Yes, we jump to permanent conclusions. This job is not going to be mine ever. I suck at entrepreneurship. Oh, this is going to go bad. We jump to permanent conclusions based on temporary circumstances. And then circumstances change. You can improve. You can learn what you have to learn. You can come to peace with whatever challenges are happening. But the important thing is that you have to keep seeing the world from a place of possibilities.
So that's clearly number one, an action item, because I like this podcast to be sort of action item oriented, in the sense that when women listen to this, I want them to be able to get off and go do something. So this is a mind shift, right? This is a perspective shift, that if you have been looking at your life through it is what it is, you have got to turn your eyes towards possibilities. And that what else you said, don't base solutions on temporary problems.
Don't jump to permanent conclusions based on temporary circumstances.
Right. And then what would be other practices that you would give women who are starting out on this breast cancer journey, who have been told they're going to be in medical menopause? They're confused. They don't know what's going on. They're terrified. They have your book. Is your book available everywhere?
Yes, my book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everywhere. The Virtuous Circle, and actually, it can be a tool for it's going from dreamer to leader. It's not focused on. It was written before I was diagnosed, but it's a tool of self-awareness. Different archetypes that live inside of us. So the dreamer, the one that allows us to visualize; the architect, the one that allows us to plan; the maker, we execute; the apprentice, the one that allows us to perfect our craft; the warrior, the one that allows us to persevere, and so on until we reach the dreamer. It's called the Virtuous Circle. But the main thing that I want to tell women, whether they are going through a health struggle or not, is that take it one day at a time. For somebody who's going through something that is hard, maybe health, or somebody who's going through a financial hardship, or somebody who is feeling worthless because, they have a birthday, they don't want to see the numbers in the candle. Because at the end of the day, I think this revolution, so to speak, that we are starting here in Gen X is all about visibility. And this is something that we as women, we have to do a little bit of learning, because Houston, we have a problem. And the problem that we have, Stacy, is that our culture as women, has taught us to mistakenly associate being humble, being a good person, being a decent human being with underplaying our own contributions and underplaying our own achievements.
And making ourselves small.
Exactly. So you could either be You could be either a decent person or a visible person. And here's the thing. Visibility is not about being vain. Visibility is not about, look at me, I'm the best. Visibility is not about being selfish. Visibility is a critical tool that we have at our disposal as women. For what? To raise the awareness about the contributions that you, your mother, your sisters, all of us are making collectively. Because if we don't talk about those contributions, if we don't make ourselves visible, nobody's going to pay attention.
I think it's so interesting that you make that distinction between visible person and decent person. Not using visibility to be decent doesn't, that's the point.
Yeah, like disappearing is going to make you a better human being. No.
Right. I'm also curious. Tell me again, I want to make sure that we spell it correctly, the site.
Menopausia.com. Menopausia. Menopausia.com. Yes. And there's 130,000 daily searches around the world that include the word menopausia. And this is a digital platform that is bilingual. So you don't have to speak Spanish to come to menopausia. You're going to find the information in English and in Spanish.
Yes, that's fantastic, because this is eventually going to be something that I think really sits at the cornerstone of the way we look at women's health generally, especially when you have lead-ins like surgical and medical induced menopause. It puts an entirely different tint on the conversation.
If you're listening to this and you go to menopausia.com and you're finding, the registration for early access, you're still in the landing page. But you may hear this and you may find our full, beautiful website functioning by the time this is released. I still don't know.
Well, that's a very fair answer. I appreciate that. You are so inspiring.
No, you're great. You're great, Stacy. And I'm happy all the good things that are coming your way.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind.
Let's Talk Menopause is a national nonprofit organization invested in changing the conversation around menopause so women get the information they need and the healthcare they deserve. Please visit letstalkmenopause.org for a wealth of menopause information, including a symptoms checklist, information about long-term health risks, how to navigate menopause at work, and interviews with health experts, and so much more. Hello Menopause is a production from Let's Talk Menopause, produced in partnership with Studio Kairos. I'm your host, Stacey London. Kirsten Cluthe is our supervising producer, editing and mixing by Revoice Media. Hello Menopause is available on Spotify, Apple, Google, and wherever you get your podcasts.